Welcome, everybody, to the Old Gold Show. We are back. You might remember me. I'm Andrew Ledman.
And I'm Casey Bartley.
And hey, basketball season is upon us. We're almost ready to go. We're recording this Friday night. That means tomorrow, Purdue basketball plays an exhibition game, charity exhibition game, against the Creighton Blue Jays. So we're not going to go into too much detail about what we're expecting at the Creighton game, just because it is an exhibition. We're going to look big picture, but there is one question I want to ask Casey about this exhibition game. I did not clear this with him before we got started.
Nope.
I know last year Purdue had their charity exhibition and they lost. And afterward, you and I had a conversation, I believe, on this very podcast about the fact that Painter doesn't do a lot of preparation for these exhibition games because he kind of wants to see what his guys can do out there.
Which is why we're not doing a lot of preparation.
Exactly. We learn from the best.
We try to be like Painter.
Yep. Yeah. It's what I do every day. It's why I have WWPD on my ceiling. I wake up and see it every morning. So do we know for sure that's what he's doing again this year? I watched his media availability earlier in the week, and he said, he didn't really have a set lineup. He just wanted to play a good team, wanted to go on the road. So do we feel like this is kind of the same idea that Painter has?
Yeah. And I think it's even more, he probably did a little more preparation than he let on just because he could, because it was all experienced guys last year.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not sure with 5 true freshmen, it would even be helpful. Like, you could tell them expect this, but
yeah,
they're going in the big lights. It's on the road. There's going to just survive, make it through the game. Don't embarrass yourself. Don't embarrass your family. And
don't embarrass your family.
You've probably done well. Well, I mean, it's a tough test because the reason these seasons generally start off against some snowflakes, some puff
cupcakes,
pastries, puff pastries, is because you kind of need to learn your team yourself. Freshmen need to get in a little bit of a groove, feel good about themselves. There's none of that when you go into Creighton on the road. And I don't know if Creighton fans are as crazy angry as SEC basketball fans. So I don't know if it'll be as hostile as Arkansas.
I would imagine not.
But it's going to be a good environment. That's a good team. That's a really well-coached team.
Yeah.
So it's just like you're going to them. So those freshmen are going to be thrown into the deep end.
Yeah. And I think that's what we want. So
also, how great is it to be back? The Old Gold Show. Field of 68. We're here.
Good. Feels good because
probably should have done this like 3 weeks ago, but there was a hurricane.
Yes. There was a hurricane and then, another hurricane. So there were 2 back-to-back. Casey, was around the area, so we had to let him live. His life was more important than an extra podcast.
Barely.
But one. We did the math. Yeah. Pros and cons. It was just a little bit more. We wanted him to survive.
If Purdue would have won the national title last year, we would have still recorded.
Yeah, true.
But they were only runner-ups.
Yeah,
so.
Right. Yeah, so they only get the silver stars or whatever it is with the special uniforms. So that is all we're going to talk about with the Creighton game. We'll take a quick break, come back, talk about season expectations. And we are back. So preseason expectations for this Purdue team, they are back-to-back Big Ten champions. The media picked them to win it again. Casey, you have been my go-to hype man these past few seasons for Purdue. You predicted them to win the Big Ten by multiple games last year. You were right. They did it. How do you feel about this season going in, looking at just where they're going to finish in the Big Ten?
I don't think the Big Ten's very good again. And I think you have to preface that. And I think when you acknowledge that, especially there's no other juggernaut teams, I'm probably going to give the benefit of the doubt to Matt Painter and the best point guard in the league, probably best player in the league. So it's not like Purdue's coming back with nothing. We'll get to the concerns, but when you start off with point guard, All-American, Matt Painter, bad Big Ten, I think that equation leads to, I'm not going to pick anyone else as a favorite, which I think is, if we're being honest, That's what the media did for
Yeah, probably what happened.
as in-depth thought as people really give to those things.
Yeah. Um, who else do you think could be in that upper echelon? There are two teams that stand out to me. Illinois, just because
You're going to forget one because they
weren't in the Big Ten last year. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'll say Illinois. I mean, Underwood has shown he's going to be there year in and year out. He's become one of the best coaches, I think, in the Big Ten.
I don't think Illinois is going to be that good this year.
Okay, fair enough. As much as I hate to say it, IU has a ton of talent.
Nah.
The question is, with it, as it always seems to be with them, is are they a team or are they, five guys out on the court? And can Woodson bring them all together? I think his best record in the Big Ten has been like 12-8 or something like that.
Woody.
So, I mean, he's got to put it together. And I assume the other team you're talking about is UCLA. Yeah. So UCLA should be pretty good as well. So it's so weird, still weird to say that they are going to challenge maybe for a Big Ten title.
A UCLA team coming to Mackey Arena.
That's right.
Pretty cool.
They opened the arena.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's a good world we're in. I like it.
Yeah.
Hate it for football.
Right.
Great for basketball.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So you mentioned, Purdue comes in at a pretty good spot. We've got 3 returning starters from a team that made the national championship game last year. That is, of course, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Trey Kaufman-Renn. For me, the biggest question on this team is not who fills those other 2 starting spots. It's where does Painter put Trey Kaufman-Renn, and where does that impact the rest of the people on the bench? Is he going to be a 4? Is he going to be a 5? Because that impacts who you play alongside him.
My curiosity for that has nothing to do with Trey Kaufman.
Okay. You're just worried about, you're more curious.
Trey's going to be good.
Right.
Trey's going to score points.
That.
He can do it at the 4. He can do it at the 5. I think the number one question Painter is going to have and want and need to figure out, is there anyone else that can rebound in a way that makes the team very good at rebounding?
Yeah. Yeah. Because, you lose Mason Gillis and you lose Zach Edey. Obviously,
Zach Edey is top 5 rebounder in the history of college basketball.
Right. And Mason Gillis was an incredible rebounder for his, position, for his size. Just an absolute beefy guy who was down there going after rebounds. And that is not exactly Fletcher Lawyer's strong suit. He's still going to be out there. Braden Smith, a very good rebounder from the point guard position. Trey Kaufman-Renn does a decent job, but it's not really his strength. So who do you think fills that role?
I do think it's hard to say it's not Kaufman-Renn's strength because he played so much time next to Edey.
Yeah, he wasn't asked to do it, I guess.
You're not going to add. I think there are potentials, and each potential leads to a different road. And I think that's an interesting way to frame how to feel about these big guys. X factor is if Cam Heide becomes an elite rebounder and Purdue can play small with him at the 4, I think that unlocks as much as anything else for Purdue. If they can survive and or thrive, grabbing rebounds, getting stops on defense with Heide playing the 4 and TKR at the 5, that is Purdue's best lineup. It's their best offensive lineup without a doubt.
Yeah.
The next thing I look at is, can Daniel Jacobson use that 7'4" length, that mobility, to effectively rebound? He is a stretch big. He is athletic and mobile and can do a lot of things in the pick and roll. And if he can play well next to TKR, he offers the rim protection that Kaufman-Renn doesn't naturally have. And then you get into a little murkier water. Caleb Furst has been an elite rebounder.
Yeah, but
wasn't one last year.
Didn't do much of anything last year.
Obviously, his junior year, very disappointing. Was that because he knew there weren't minutes, or was it something else? Yada, yada, yada. Can he be better? Can he go back to freshman, sophomore Caleb Furst? If so, that smooths away a lot of the concerns. Because I think if First is really good again, Painter knows he can just trust Kaufman, Wren, and First. When he
Yeah.
needs to, just go to those two guys. They can switch, they can rebound. Perfect. Will Berg is, in theory, Purdue's best rebounder. There were some offensive drills or scrimmages at practice this summer where the only thing that mattered was that Will Berg was on one team and he grabbed multiple offensive rebounds in a row, going up against Smith and Lawyer's side, going up against Trey Kaufman Wren. His ability to get to rebounds kept possession after possession after. I think it went like 5 deep with him just grabbing
Wow.
boards. He's that big. He moves pretty well for his size. I don't know if he can do everything else really well on the court, but if he is elite at rebounding, he will play.
Yeah. And I remember last year, you and I were at the Maryland game, and you talked to me about Jacobson and how excited you were to see him in a Purdue uniform.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about how talented he was, how long he was, and how he can do a lot of stuff on the court. And now he's here. Now he's going to be a freshman on this Purdue team. With him, with Berg, and with Trey Kaufman Wren, how do you think the minutes get balanced between those three guys?
It's tough. I think in the beginning, it's going to be as evenly as possible because I think Painter's going to want as many data points on all three of them. Once again, if Heidi can survive the 4, that would probably mean one of them falls out of the rotation because I just don't see all 3 of them being better than what Heidi can do at the 4. Berg, I think I've been pretty I don't see Berg as ever going to be an all Big Ten level big man. I don't think he has a rounded enough offensive game. I don't think his hands are great. I don't know how he's going to function in actual competitive minutes. I get the feeling if he was that good, he would have gotten some minutes last year. Maybe that might be unfair. It's probably unfair.
I don't. I think that's unfair. I mean, what, are you going to take Zach Edey off for an extra 5 minutes a game? I find that hard to believe.
Yeah. So I have some doubts about how well the offense functions with him, but at the same time, talking to PJ Thompson about the offense, Will Berg is the screen guy. Like he sets incredible screens, creates a lot of space for Braden Smith. There is avenues where he's going to play 10 minutes a night, no matter what.
Okay.
I think if there was one person that's going to take over, that could take over the 5, start, play 25, 30 minutes, I think it's Jacobson.
Really?
I'm not saying it's going to happen, but that ceiling, the way he can shoot, the way he can move, his ability to be a lob threat or a threat from anywhere on the floor, I think at times Purdue's going to need that to help unstick stuff for Braden, for the shooters. It's really hard to track a big man who's that big that moves that well. So I just think there's a ceiling with him that's really good. And I think him and Trey make a lot of sense. And if you really need someone stout down low, Trey. I think theoretically we always think, oh, big guy that can move long. Jacobson could guard the 4. He probably can't.
Right.
He probably can't. So depending on who you're playing, but I just think I like Trey and Jacobson on the floor together. I like Jacobson and Braden Smith on the floor together. I think there's so much upside if he can handle the physicality because he's been bullied in practice. He's been bullied by some other Purdue's bigs. Can he get disciplined? Can he get a little stronger, know how to use what he can use to kind of overcome what he lacks in pure depth?
Girth. Yeah.
Girth.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be quite an education these early games. And Creighton is no slouch. If you look at the early preseason rankings, they're, I believe, just one spot behind Purdue. I think it's either 14 and 15 or 15 and 16, something like that. So this is a good Creighton team Purdue will face on Saturday. And it should give everybody a good kind of gut check and see where they are. Elsewhere, returning players, what do we think? Who do we think or hope maybe sees the biggest jump from last season to this season?
I think it's got to be Miles Cole. I think any other answer is just being too cute about it.
He was my answer. So yeah.
So like, because his advancement doesn't just mean he scores more. It means he's better with the ball in his hand. He's a second release valve next to Smith and Lawyer. It means his athleticism and size and defense that he showed late is on the court even more.
Big improvement as the season went on. That's why you saw him play more minutes in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. And if he can defend guards, defend wings, do everything in that way while opening up the offense more, while still I mean, he shot over 40% from three as a freshman. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So if he's able to put all that together, you know, and we're talking inch up to 13, 14 points a game, now you're cooking.
13, 14 points a game?
If not more.
Oh, I mean, that would be shocking to me if he averages that.
If he plays well in a lot of minutes, points are not hard to come by for one Miles
team,
Coleman.
I guess. Yeah. Well, okay, that's true. I mean, he's a good scorer, no doubt about it.
Do you like dunks? He dunks. Do you like three-pointers? He three-pointer. Do you like shots off the dribble? He does that. Like, if he can get to where he's good with the ball in his hand and can get his own shots, get to the rim, that unlocks something that, as good as Lawyer is, as much as he does, it's not something he can do in the same capacity that Colvin can.
Yeah, of course not.
In the quieter level, I think Camden Edey is already a breakout. I think he's going to be, it's just going to be, are we ever going to judge a breakout player as a guy who plays 27 minutes a night, guards the best guy on the other floor, scores 8 points, grabs 4 rebounds, gets 2 assists, 1 steal, 1 block?
Sure.
It's just going to be solid from Edey.
Yeah. So this leads me to one of the other questions or qualms I have about this Purdue team. So last year, obviously, we had Lance Jones as a second ball handler, a guy who could take a little bit of the pressure off Braden Smith. Who fills that role now on this team? I mean, do we have to rely on a freshman, CJ Cox, or I mean, is it Lawyer? What are we doing as a second ball handler to help Braden Smith?
It's not just CJ Cox. Purdue has 2 true freshman guards. It's CJ Cox and Jakari Harris. Jakari Harris's best quality is defense, strong body, and his ability to mold into whatever offense against whatever defense is happening. He does not push his own shot. He does not try to do too much. And he's always been that way. And that's a really rare talent, especially in someone young. Something Painter mentioned this last week. His ability to just do what needs to be done, super valuable. He can defend up like Lance Jones. He can handle the ball. He's a good athlete. He's going to be good from day one.
Oh,
he might start from day one.
I've heard those reports.
He might. I still feel like Colvin fits every bill people think Jakari does. I have a hard time believing that Matt Painter can look at Camden Edey and Miles Colvin as 2 sophomores and go, I know you guys sat all of last year, even though you're super talented. I'm going to do it to you again, this time for a true freshman.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but also CJ Cox, really good shot maker. He's impressed in every scrimmage I've seen. Everything he does, can shoot the lights out of the ball. He's going to do a good job of scoring alongside Braden Smith, and he defends his ass off.
We need that. Purdue needs that.
Strong hands. Strong hands.
Good. Yeah, I mean, Purdue has a need for additional ball handler. You know, the loss of Lance Jones. Lance Jones will go down as probably the greatest one-year player in Purdue basketball history. You know, and so a lot of the focus, of course, has been on how do you replace Zach Edey. You, of course, cannot replace Zach Edey.
You cry.
Yeah, you cry.
You replace him with tears.
Up, you cry again.
Wake up. Put a little makeup.
I love a little System of a Down reference. Chop suey for those listening. And I think the loss of Lance Jones, replacing Lance Jones, is almost as difficult for this Purdue team because he had such an impactful role.
Someone's got to dance.
Yeah, someone has to do the Lance dance during the start of the second half, which I'm sure we've got some guys with rhythm. I'm sure somebody will pick that up. I was thinking as I was on my way home from dinner tonight that last season obviously was such a high for Purdue fans for this team, winning the Big Ten, getting to the Final Four, winning a game at the Final Four to get to the national title game.
I
It
think I
reminded,
remember that.
yeah, vaguely. It reminded me of like watching the buildup of the MCU. You get all the way to, listen, follow me. You get all the way to Infinity War. You have the big down note, which was, of course, 2 seasons ago. Purdue loses in the first round. You got to wait a year, and then you get to the Final Four. You get to the national championship game. Yes, they lost in the national championship game. We're not discounting that. So I'm wondering, people talk about the MCU as that was the high point, in game was the high point, and since then it's been kind of middling. Is there any fear that there will be
Is
an emotional
Tennessee
letdown?
like Tennessee's obviously not Thanos because Tennessee's
Because
never
we keep
beaten
beating them.
Purdue.
Right.
So they're Loki?
Yes, they're Loki.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
that's where we really came together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, is there any fear of a letdown, emotionally, or just from a like not burnout perspective? I mean, I know these are young guys who get a summer the summer off. I'm putting that in quotes. But I mean, is there a fear of a drop off from one season to another just because of the high that we just came off of?
I don't think for that reason, and I don't think fear is the right word. What I'm very interested in is how does Purdue shift going from Zach Edey as the leader of the program, which, despite not being the most vocal person, he was,
Yeah.
because he was that good and that just modest and hardworking and dedicated to Purdue, the team, Painter. And it's not that Braden Smith isn't those things. It's just Braden Smith's also kind of an asshole, like a
Yeah.
good asshole.
Oh yeah.
But I'm wondering how that, because teams are molded after their best players. And I'm just interested to see how that starts to evolve and twist going into this year, next year, as these next two teams become the Braden Smith, like his opus.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point, because at that Tennessee game in the Elite Eight, you and I were just a couple seats apart down there on the floor. And in that second half, as Purdue was coming toward where we were, the side we were sitting, I mean, you could see Braden Smith just like the look in his face of like barking at his own teammates, not being like mean, but like letting them know, like, this is my team. I'm in charge. Look at me and listen. Like, go over there. I don't need you here. Go over there. Like, he was firmly in control, and he knew what he was doing. He knew this was his moment, and he is not afraid to yell and not afraid to hurt feelings, because it doesn't matter. We're playing a game and I'm playing to win. And I love that about him. And Purdue needs that. It would be quite the switch from the more mild-mannered Zach Edey.
And Zach Edey is just like such a solid dude.
Oh, yeah.
In a way that where like you look and you're like, I feel pretty good right now. Like he's going to hold me up. And Braden Smith, you're like, he might just throw me to the wolves if I don't like hunt good or whatever wolves do.
Yeah. Well, they do hunt in a pack. So, the lone wolf scenario is not a real thing.
Right.
But I get your meaning. Yeah. So is there anybody else on this squad, or anything else, questions leading into the season, that we haven't touched on before we head out for the evening?
We got to stop hating Fletcher Lawyer.
Oh, hey, I mean, don't look at me.
I'm looking at home, you, Purdue fan. I know you slipped up last year. I know you had a moment. Look at my eyes. I know you said shit when he threw it out of bounds or got trapped under the basket or got beat by a big NBA wing. But Fletcher Lawyer's the dude, and he's been the dude for 2 years. All he does is win. He is going to score maybe like 17 points a game this year.
He'll have the opportunity for sure.
So just check yourself. Okay. Never going to be the best defender, but Fletcher Lawyer's that guy, and we need to recognize it.
All right. Well, you're on the record. You're on the record for that. So that's going to do it for us. I think that's a good look at the season in general. Obviously, Purdue plays a game on Saturday. Casey and I will come back with you probably in a few days. We're working on the schedule still, but we'll see what we learn from this one. Reminder, the only way to watch is through the Creighton website. You can also listen for free on the Creighton radio website. So you can find that link on hammerandrails.com.
I think it's $7.
Yes, it's $6.99 for the game. They originally announced it was 10, but they apparently had a fire sale and now it's only $6.99. So good luck to everybody trying to work that. I hope it works seamlessly. You never know with these kind of one-off streaming issues, but that's going to do it for our season preview. For Casey and myself, thanks for joining.